Now, we all know that the economy has a very long way to go. The loss of output and jobs in this recession has been so severe that it will take a number of quarters of robust job growth and GDP growth to restore the economy to full health and full employment. But we are unquestionably on the right trajectory. And the policy response is a big part of the reason that we're on the road to recovery. I actually want to take just a little time to talk particularly about the effects of the Recovery Act. You know, the Council of Economic Advisors was actually written into the law, and we have to write a report to Congress every quarter talking about the economic impact of the Recovery Act. And it's a job that we take very seriously. Over the past year, we've analyzed various components, everything from the state fiscal relief to the clean energy provisions to the income tax cuts and income support payments. And consistently, each one of those in-depth analyses has shown strong impacts of the Act on growth and jobs. Our most recent report estimated that the Recovery Act has saved or created roughly 2.5 million jobs since it started, or as of the first quarter of 2010. What that means is that 2.5 million people have jobs today that wouldn't have jobs were it not for the Recovery Act. And our estimates are based on two different approaches, and they're similar to those of private forecasters and the nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office. But perhaps the best way to see the impact of the Recovery Act is not in the overall, in our overall jobs estimates or even in the aggregate economic statistics. It's actually to take stock of what it's doing right on the ground in a state like Ohio. So just to give you some numbers, the Act has provided some $2 billion of state fiscal relief to Ohio. And this funding has saved thousands of teacher jobs and allowed the state to deal with the devastating impact of the recession without a significant tax increase. The Act is also supporting more than 400 transportation projects in Ohio and over 2,000 loans to Ohio small businesses. And this is helping to spur job creation and is helping to turn the Ohio economy around, and importantly, will make it even stronger in the future. Equally important, the Act has provided some $2.5 billion of tax relief to some 4.5 million working families in Ohio. Another $2.5 billion of aid to almost 1 million unemployed workers and others in the front line of the recession here. And even $500 million of one-time payments to some 2 million Ohio seniors and veterans. This tax relief and income support is not only helping families get through hard times, but putting money in people's pockets. It's supporting demand, and it's making the recession less severe and the recovery stronger than it otherwise would be. All right, well, because of the actions that we've taken, the economy is decidedly better. The treatment is working. But we need to be realistic about the substantial challenges that remain. With an overall unemployment rate of 9.7%, it's clear that while the economy may be recovering, it is not yet recovered. Fundamentally, the economy is still suffering from a deficiency of demand. You know, recessions occur when, for some reason, like a financial crisis or a decline in wealth, consumers and firms stop buying. Producers respond to the fall-off in demand by producing less and laying off workers. The resulting unemployment then reduces demand further. Recoveries happen when spending starts to rebound. And this is exactly what's happening. What last Friday's GDP report showed is that consumer spending was up strongly, and firms were doing more investment in equipment and software. But even though demand is growing again, its level is below where it was when the recession started, and far below where it would be if we had grown normally in the past 2 years. Indeed, the Congressional Budget Office estimates that demand and hence output are at least 6% below its trend path. And Friday's GDP report made it clear where some of this deficiency of demand is coming from. For example, while business investment in equipment and software is growing again, it actually started from a painfully low level, so it's still low in an absolute sense. And business investment in structures, that is, building of factories, shopping malls, commercial buildings, is continuing to fall. Likewise, consumers are spending more, but housing construction remains low and even fell again in the first quarter. So this important traditional source of demand and employment remains in the doldrums. Finally, at the same time that the federal government is spending and increasing demand, state and local governments are retrenching. Right? The recession has just had a devastating impact on state and local revenues, and governments are being forced to cut back on essential services. Projected shortfalls for state and local governments are roughly $300 billion over the next 2 fiscal years. If these shortfalls are closed by tax increases, the negative impact on consumer spending could be substantial. And if they're closed by laying off teachers and first responders, as many reports suggest is likely to happen, the impact on education and public safety could be terrible. Today's painfully high unemployment rate is a direct consequence of the shortfall in demand. Unemployment is not high because of structural changes or because workers aren't trying to find jobs. It is high because we are not producing anywhere near at a normal level. What all this means is that it's essential that policymakers continue to take steps to help generate private demand and growth. It's not enough that output and employment are growing. We need to spur robust growth that will speed the return of output and employment to normal. And that's why the President's been working with Congress to pass a small business jobs bill. One key piece of this package is a lending fund that will help small businesses get the credit that they need to grow. Another piece eliminates capital gains taxes for people that invest in small businesses, making it more desirable to do that investment. The President's also continuing to work with Congress to try to jumpstart the clean energy economy. One program in the Recovery Act, the Clean Energy Manufacturing Tax Credit, has been very successful in helping American firms establish themselves as producers of clean energy products, like wind turbines and solar panels. And this program is greatly oversubscribed, and further investments in this area is something the President thinks would be good for job creation and good for the long-run health of this crucial new industry. More aid to state and local governments would also be incredibly helpful. The dire condition of state and local budgets is probably one of the most difficult headwinds that the U.S. economy faces on the road to recovery. Finding the funds to keep teachers in the classroom and to maintain essential services is one of the most effective things we could do to support families, communities, and local businesses. Now, the additional actions that we're talking about are all very well targeted. We've looked for programs with the very highest bang for the buck. We are all very aware of our long-run fiscal challenges and the need to take steps to get our fiscal house in order. The President is absolutely committed to dealing with the budget deficit as the economy recovers. But it would be penny-wise and pound foolish to try to deal with our long-run budget problem by tightening fiscal policy immediately or forgoing additional emergency spending to reduce unemployment. Immediate fiscal contraction would inevitably nip the nascent economic recovery in the bud, just as fiscal and monetary contraction back in 1936 and 1937 set off another recession before the recovery from the Great Depression was complete. And nothing would be more damaging to our long-run fiscal future than if we had a prolonged recession that led to permanently higher unemployment. Responsible, targeted actions today to help the private sector come back more strongly is the right policy both for people and for the long-term health of the economy. All right, well, in addition to doing more on jobs, as Jan mentioned, the President has another key item on his legislative agenda, and that's financial regulatory reform. And certainly compared to the steps to deal with the immediate jobs problem, financial reform may seem to be something that matters only inside the Beltway or on Wall Street. What I want to say today is that nothing could be further from the truth. It was inadequate financial regulatory and monetary framework that led to the stock market crash in 1929 and the catastrophic waves of bank panics starting in 1930 and eventually to the Great Depression. And it was a failure to update our regulatory system in response to decades of financial innovation that led to some of the excesses of the early part of the decade and to the disastrous near meltdown of the financial system in 2008 and 2009, and so caused the Great Recession.